Menachem, Yudzai Menachem. My children got married on this day. My son, Bedele, my daughter, Lebrachale, got married. I don't know if it's 3 years ago, 4 years ago, which is pretty embarrassing, yeah? So it'll be l'schus, them, for their Yom HaChasaneh. Anyway, this is a Maamar from Pashas Vishinantum. We're holding Akev. So this is Maamar Vishinantum. Next week we'll learn a Maamar of Akev. So we're a little bit behind, not much behind. Last week we learned the Maamar of Pinchas. Now we're just a week behind, but it's close enough because this Maamar is really a Maamar within a Maamar. It's two Maimarim. The Maamar is about the first and second parsha of Krishma, and the question of the Rebbe is that the first parsha of Krishma, first it says Torah, then it says mitzvahs. Vishinantum levanecha v'dibarta bom. Then it says Ukshartam la'isa yadecha v'hayu l'tetafet b'neinecha. And the Rebbe brings the Gemara Huksha kol ha'teira kula l'tfilm. And the second parsha is Fachet. Ukshartam la'isa yadecha v'hatos b'neichem v'limadetam oisim es b'neichem adaber bam. First mitzvahs and then Torah. So the Rebbe asks, how come the first parsha of Krishma is first Torah, then mitzvahs, and the second parsha of Krishma is first mitzvahs and then Torah? And I have to tell you, that part of the Maamar I'm teaching Sunday. In other words, today we're learning half. The Maamar is 10 pages. It's not a hard Maamar. It's really not a hard Maamar. If I wanted to crush it, I could do it in one class. But I don't want to do it. I'll do it in 2 classes. So today I'm going to teach. We're going to start Perek Beis. And we're going to learn Beis, and we're going to learn Gimel, and we're going to learn Dalid, and then the Mitzvah Hey, and Vav, and Zayin, and Ches I'm going to continue on Sunday. Come 11:15, the second class, a Yom class, we're going to be doing the second part of this Maamar. What's interesting to me is that the Rebbe is going to explain that the second Parsha Krishma is higher than the first Parsha. The first Parsha Krishma is one Madrege, first Teda, then mitzvahs. The second Parsha Krishma is sort of Liyasad Lave. First mitzvahs and then Teda, because mitzvahs is higher than Teda, Maisa Godel. And I've seen this in a number of them. I mean, every person who learns Chumash, learns Teda, and who learns Chazal, learns Gemara, knows that the first Parsha of Krishma is higher than the second Parsha of Krishma. Because the first Parsha of Krishma says B'chol Meidecha. Second Parsha of Krishma, B'chol Avavcha, B'chol Nashma, doesn't say B'chol Meidcha. It's a lower level. But Kedarkei BaKodesh, the Rebbe turns everything on its head. The Rebbe is going to explain using the question of Torah first and mitzvah second, or mitzvahs first and Torah second, to elevate the second Parsha of Krishma. Like the first Parsha of Krishma is now. Second Parsha of Krishma is the Yasulavi. I find that very interesting. Very interesting. And I think a chiddush. I mean, this Maamar is based heavily. You look in footnote 5. There's a lot of Maram Akemis from the Alter Rebbe, from Tzemach Tzedek, but that's it. After the Tzemach Tzedek, there's no references to this sugyam, to this kasha, this teretz. I did not look up not the Alter Rebbe, not the Tzemach Tzedek. But l'chayra, this vart that the second parsha of Krishma is higher than the first parsha of Krishma. Again, I didn't look. Could be the Alter Rebbe already said it. The way this Maamar plays out, the second parsha of Krishma is like Mashiach. The first parsha of Krishma is now, second parsha of Krishma is like Mashiach, and it comes after v'chora afa d'sham b'chem, v'yotzer s'shamayim, then comes Mashiach. That's how it's going to play out in the Maamar. So that's, to me, the part of this Maamar which is a spin, a shinui, a chiddush, not classic. And again, I do not know if the Alter Rebbe explains it this way. I didn't look. But we're going to learn, the way I like to say it, it's a Maamar within a Maamar. Right? The Rebbe said this Maamar was a Thursday night before Shabbos Vishinantum. That year Vishinantum obviously was Yud Zayin, Tezayin Menachem was Shabbos. So Tisha B'Av was also Shabbos. It happened, right? 9 plus 7 is 16. Tisha B'Av was Shabbos. So the next Shabbos was Tezayin Menachem Pashas Vishinantum. We're already holding Pashas Akev. And Thursday night was a Fabrengen. And they were praying for Chamishas B'Yav. And he said a Maamar which is a little bit Pashas HaShavua. Pashas Vishinantum, you have the first Parsha of Krishma, Vishinantum levanecha v'dibarta bam, and it was also Chamishas B'Yav. So he starts the Maamar with Vishinantum levanecha. He's going to finish the Maamar with Vishinantum levanecha, and in the middle you have Le'hoyu Yom Tevim LiYisrael Kechamisha Asa B'Av V'Chiyei Kippurim. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to learn just half a Maimer. We're going to start Pedic Beis, and we're going to learn this shtickle about like Hayom Tevim Yisrael Kechamisha Asav Avachim Kippurim. That's going to be our limud. That's going to be the shiur of today. And like I said, B'linei, the Sunday second hour, we're going to do the other part of the Maimer. Okay, we'll learn it inside. Pedic Beis. Let's explain the questions of the first Parsha of Krishma versus the second Parsha of Krishma, which we're skipping. We're not doing today, by explaining the inyan of Chamisha Asabiyav, which is, first of all, Isa b'Mishnah. The Mishnah says, the greatest Yom Tov in the entire year were Chamisha Asabav and Yom Kippur, and Bepashtus is because it was a day that they made Shidduchim. But Bepnimius is because it's the day of the renewal of the Shidduch between Yidden and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kvayochel. And then the Rebbe says, Gemara. Then the Gemara goes ahead and lists Pratei HaDvarim Baruch, the details about it. And by the way, at the end of this Maimer, the Rebbe says, in a footnote, this Maimer is not Muger, but the Rebbe wrote 5 notes. The Rebbe looked over the Maimer at the time. There are 5 Hagos of the Rebbe. You can see them. They're listed inside. Alabez Gimel Daled Hey. And one of them is that in the Gemara they list 6 miles of Chamishas. But this Wednesday night we had a Fabreng online, a Zoom Fabreng, that was organized by an organization called Oyel Yosef Yitzchak. There were almost 100 people online. And I went through the Gemara. That's what I did. I went through the Gemara. All the 6 points. Kalu Meisei Midban Bilamus, Hitiru Ben Yamin Lavi Bekohol, Hutru Ashvatim Lavi Zebazeh. Hosha ben El took down the roadblocks that prevented people coming to Yerushalayim. Nitnu Harugi Beit Al-Kvura, and Tvar Magol, that they broke the axe symbolically because they were chopping wood for Kabbalah Eitz. Those are 6 that are listed in the Gemara. So the Rebbe writes that Arizal brings 7. I would have loved to have the 2 minutes. It's all it takes. The Rebbe writes that in Kisvei Arizal he brings 7. Moine Zayin Mailis Tevis Shal Esayim HaMechuna LiYesed Shuhu Zayin. They said the Pri Eitz Chaim. And there's no mocker. It just says as they said the Pri Eitz Chaim. So I don't know. But the Rebbe says that the Kabbalah brings 7 milas of Chamisha Asabiyav. So the Mishnah says one thing. That Layayam Tevin Sol Chamisha Azuchem Kippurim against the Shidduchim and the ultimate Shidduch of Yidden and the Meibishten. And the Gemara lists 7 things. So now the Rebbe says, I'm reading from the beginning, okay? It says in the Maimarim, Shemelosh and Chazal, Loi ho Yom Tevin v'cholu. When it says there was no Yom Tov equal to this day, mashme is indicative. Shetes v'yav Chamisha Asabiyav is Lamayla Gama Yom Tevim Shem Pesach or Shavuos B'Sukkos. It's higher than the other 3 Yom Tevim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos. I don't understand. If you're going to say the Chamishas was better than Shavuos, why? Because Shavuos is not the middle of the month. Shavuos is only the 6th and the 7th of Sivan, or the 5th or the 6th or the 7th of Sivan, not the 15th of Sivan. So you would say it doesn't have the Maila of Kaima Siyara Bashlamus of a full moon. 4 lines into the page, but Adai and Tzadok B'Yeveh Hezbid, how can you say that there's a Chamail of Chamishas B'Yav, Chamishas B'Nissen? Chamisha B'Tishrei. Chamisha B'Tishrei is also the 15th of the month when the moon is full. Chamisha B'Tishrei Sukkos is also the 15th of the month when the moon is full. Afal Pi Shebishloshtam, even though all 3, Yeshnei Ha'ile the Yom Chamisha Asa B'Chodesh, it has the advantage of being the 15th day of the month. And of course, we all know Shabbai Kaima Siyara Bashlamusa when the moon is full. It represents the idea of the Eibishter and Klal Yisrael facing each other completely, and there's a full Gilui Kayochel from the Eibishter to Knesset Yisrael, right? Chamish Asar B'Nissen and Chamish Asar B'Tishrei. There's a full engagement Kayach within the Eibishter and Yidden, just like Chamish Asar B'Yav. So the Rebbe answers, V'Yadua B'Yer B'Zeh. The Teretz is a Pashat, right? The moon receives from the sun. But before the moon receives from the sun, the moon didn't receive from the sun. And there was a point at which there was no sunlight reflecting the moon at all. Before the Moilet, the moon was dark, which shows on Yerida. And then there's a Moilet, a new moon, right? And you know the rule. The only reason the new moon is called Chodesh New is because the moon doesn't get smaller, and then get bigger. It disappears completely. So you're starting over. So that's a concept of renewal. But the renewal reflects the previous erasure. What happened before? And he says like this. The reason Chamisha Asa B'Yav is greater than Chamisha Asa B'Tishrei and Chamisha Asa B'Nisan is Li'esei B'Chedesh Av, because what came before? It's the month of Av. Shes Chalas, even the beginning of Av is the greatest Yirida. V'ad Yirida Acha Yirida, one descent after another, Loksa B'Kiflayim, B'Glal HaYirida B'Matzav HaRuchni B'Evet Shechotu B'Kilayim. They were punished on a level that's called double, because they sinned on a level which is called double. Spiritually, so Chedesh Menachem Yidden have fallen again. And therefore there's a Einish and a Einish again. And then comes Chamisha Asa B'Yav, V'lachein therefore, Hine. Since Chamisha Asa B'Yav, which is the maximum unification of Yidden and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, comes after the maximum Yerida and Einish, therefore, Haliyah Shaliyachar is at the ascent of Chamisha Asa. Since it's Bal Achrei Avedas HaTshuva, Yidden are doing tshuva, and again it's bekiflayim. Just like there was local bekiflayim, because they had a chatu bekiflayim. Therefore, they have bechiyah bekiflayim. Everything is double. And then they're consoled doubly, and therefore you have the biggest aliyah. You have nachamu ami, right? And you also have a series of l'sheines oshev ashivim, right? You have osef asifim. You have a series of double l'sheines, which includes Bechiyah B'Kiflayim, Bochai Tifke B'Layla, right? So they sin doubly, they do tshuva doubly, they're consoled doubly, and they're embraced doubly. The Rebbe spoke once that Kiflayim doesn't mean twice as much. Kiflayim with the Shir doesn't mean 2 times as much. It means infinite. Because you can multiply it. You have 1 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 2. Then you multiply. Twice as much is not twice as much. That's why it says in Chazal, the Rebbe spoke about it in Nun Beis, Pasha Shmeis, Kol L'Shenel Shalgula Kafa. You have Lech Lecha, and you have, he brings 5 different expressions, each one of them a pocket pokadati. Every Lashon is double. And the Rebbe explained that the Inyan of double is B'ligvul. So the Aveda was B'ligvul, the Einish was B'ligvul, the Tshuva was B'ligvul, and the Nechama is B'ligvul. And therefore you have Aliyah, Hachi Nailis, the highest Aliyah, Shalei Be'erech, which is even higher, Meha Aliyah, the Chedesh Chamisha Asa B'Nisan, Chamisha Asa B'Tishrei. So even though the moon cycles in a predictable way, right, the fact that the moon cycles means the moon is not the same. But the fact that every month the moon repeats the same cycle means the moon is the same. But every moon is different. Every moon is different because it disappears and is reborn. It's new. And the physical reality of the moon is a reflection of a mysticism. And if you want to understand the moon of each month, you have to identify the in-between moment, when the moon disappeared before it's reborn. If the in-between moment is not so dark, so the new moon is not so bright, if the in-between moment is the maximum of darkness, then the new moon is the maximum of light. Chamisha Asa B'Yav, because it comes after the Churban Mital Zach. And last week on Friday I mentioned, Ariella was so shocked. I told the Chedushim Atzumim, the Chedesh Menachem is the yard site of Aaron HaKain. Aaron HaKain, whose whole lineage was Shalom, was stolen away from the Jewish people on the Reish Chedesh Menachem. In other words, if I may, before the moon was even born, there was no Aaron HaKain, there was no Eisa Shalom. And we all know that the Churban Abayis was because there was a lack of Shalom, V'chuli. And Chamish Asa B'Yav is the healing of that darkness. Since the darkness is deeper, the healing is brighter. So the Rebbe says, this is why Chamisha Asa B'Yav is greater than Chamisha Asa B'Nisan and Chamisha Asa B'Tishrei, because the Yerida is greater, and the Lashon of the Rebbe is, it's a Kiflayim Yerida, so the Aliyah and the Necham is also greater, it's a Kiflayim Aliyah and the Necham. But you have to break it down further. And the Rebbe is going to say 3 levels. The lowest level is going to be Pesach, Chamisha Asa B'Nisan, Tzadik. The second level is going to be Tisukkas, Chamisha B'Tishrei, because that's Baal Tshuva. But the Rebbe is going to say the tshuva of Tishrei is halicha darga acha darga. There's different madrigas in tshuva. There's a gradual steps of tshuva. The tshuva of Tisha B'Av and Chamisha Asa B'Yav is b'shaytecha do b'rigecha. That's how the Maamar is going to go. Should I say it again? Yeah, you got it. Over Prat, Yisrael says the Rebbe Hine. Gam Chamisha Asa B'Tishrei Yoli La'achrei Yirida. Sukkis is also tshuva. It's also aliyah after a yirida. Okay, do achelik ben Nisan leTishrei. The difference between Nisan and Tishrei is Shen Yonesh on Nisan over just tzaddikim. Nisan we were all tzaddikim. Because like it says in Chazal, Gerish and his guys, we were just brand new people. When we converted to Yiddishkeit, we were brand new, so we were tzaddikim. And that's why it says the Rebbe Chagas took this Nigd Avram Avinu, which is in Yanach Chesed, who reveals light of the Eibishter into the world in a way of Mamayla Lamata, to the extent that it's Keilela, Malakus, and the Eibishter and the world are one, but it's all Mamayla Lamata. Turn to page Shin Pei Ches. You bring the Eibishter into the world, and you establish that the Eibishter and the world are one, but it comes from heaven to earth. Mashain Kain Tishrei, 3 lines into the paragraph. Tishrei is different. So first of all, Tishrei, the letters are backwards. Tov, and then Shin, and then Resh, and then Yud. Pesach is first Aviv, right? Aviv is Aleph, and then Beis, and then Yud. You're going forward. And Tishrei, you're going backwards. This is Tzemach Tzedek. So Tishrei is backwards. The work of Tishrei is also Tshuva. Which is why Tishrei happens after Elul. And the Inyan of Elul is Charot, Alahava, and Kabul, Teva, Abba. And then, of course, you have to have Yom Kippur, which is the Kates, Slicha Mechil. Then comes Sukkot. That Kaim was Sira Bashlamusa, the moon is full. Sh'azu Yom Tov the Chag Sukkot, it's the Yom Tov of Sukkot, which is celebrating, it's the Shleimos of the Aved of Tshuva Elul and Tishrei. Like I told you many times, that even in the Gemara, you see that Sukkot is about Tshuva. That by Simchas Beis HaSheyeva, they used to sing. Sukkot is about Sheyeva, they used to sing that in Hatadikim Hayu Eimrim, Ashrei Yalduseinu Shalei Kipra Zikna, Shalei Bisha Ziknaseinu, our youth didn't embarrass our elder years. The Bali Tshuva used to say, Ashrei Ziknaseinu She Kipra Yalduseinu, our senior years atoned for our youth. Elu ve'elu Eimir Ma'asher Misha Lechato Meshachata Yoshev. Why are they singing Simchas Beis HaSheyeva about Tshuva? Because it's a hemshech to Yom Kippur. It's a hemshech to the 40 days beginning with the Chedesh Elul. So Tishrei is in Tshuva. So the Rebbe says that it finishes Siyam v'Chesem Shlei Shmir. It says Simchas Torah, which is the Simcha associated with Tshuva. Kum Tochayis Lazei, Pesach and Nisan is Tzaddik. But Tishrei and Sukkot is also Tshuva. No? So if Pesach, if Sukkot and if Tishrei and Sukkot is also Tshuva, what's the Yisr of Chamisha Asa B'Yav? However, Inyan Zeh, it's taket true that Gam Chedesh Tishrei hu aliyah la'acharei hayarida mitad avedas hatshuva shabei. Tishrei, like Chamish Asa B'Yav, is also an inyan tshuva with the milas of tshuva. Says the Rebbe, but irak be'erech ulagabe Chedesh Nisan, only when you compare it to Nisan. Masha'en can be'erech ulagabe Chedesh Av. If you compare Tishrei's tshuva to Tisha B'Av and Chamish Asa B'Yav's tshuva, the whole Tishrei of tshuva, tshuva of Tisha becomes like tzaddik. Parenthesis, because Sharak boy of only in the month of Av, there's a terrible Yerida. Therefore, the tshuva of Chedesh of Menachem is, since the Yerida is greater, the Aliyah is greater, as opposed to Tishrei. Even Tishrei, which is in Yom Tshuva, is al derech Avedas HaTzadikim. Compared to Nisan and Pesach, Tishrei and Sukkot is Tshuva. Compared to Chamish Asa B'Yav, it's Tzaddik. Why? V'ha'inyan b'zeh dehine. Avedas HaTshuva shebetei Chedesh Tishrei. Taka Elul and Tishrei, the time of Tshuva, but it's Eifen dehalicha darga chadarga. There's an order. There's a gradualism. There's a step. There's Tshuva Taton, there's Tshuva Elul, there's Chedesh Elul, there's the Yemei Aslichis, there's Reish Hashanah, there's the Sarah Yamish Bein Hashanah, the Yom Kippurim, there's Yom Kippurim, there's the Dal Yom Kippur Sukkos, and then of course there's the Sukkah, and there's the Lulu, and the Simchas Beis HaSheyeva, and then there's the Shana Rabbah, and then there's Shmini Atzeres, and then the Simchas Torah, and then the Shabbos Bereishis, and then there's V'yankav Haloch Hadarkei, and there's Ayin Chesh. There's steps, and even though it's an avodah of tshuva done with steps has some kind of a limitation. Shalchein tzarich liyis hagdama the Yerech Yom says in L'kutei Torah of the Arizal that you have it's the parsha of Yifasteir. Yerech Yomim, the 30 days goes on Elul, right? The Tzalik Adar Yacharag. I just skipped 2 lines. Then comes Rosh Hashanah, which is the Rosh of the whole Chedesh Tishrei. Next line. Which is Chamish also b'Chedesh. The Rebbe doesn't go through all the steps. He just mentions 3. The Yerech Yom of Sukkot Elul, like it says in Kisvei Arizal. Rosh Hashanah being the Rosh of the whole Tishrei, and Sukkot itself. But there's many, many more steps, and they're gradual, and they're orderly, step by step by step. Mashenke b'Chedesh Av is different in this whole thing. Because ein ze be'efen shel alicha medarge ledarge. Chedesh of, there's no gradual, there's no steps. El ali takef. In an instant. That la'achrei tchachas ha'yirid Tisha B'Av. First, you have the great Yerid of Tisha B'Av itself. And immediately thereafter, minna kotza la kotza, you have a aliyah. Between Tisha B'Av and Chemish Matzvav is 6 days. That's a lot of days. And Faket, the Rebbe is going to mention in a moment, you know why there's 6 days? No, the story was 6 days. They went to sleep in the grave in the Midbar on Tisha B'Av. They woke up in the morning. So they went to sleep the next night and they woke up in the morning. And they went to sleep the next night and they woke up in the morning. Until Chemish, they saw a full moon. They said, no, we didn't make a mistake. The Eibishter forgave us. So 6 nights, they were not sure. Maybe they miscalculated and they were still going to pass because they were in their 60th year, was the Shana Harboim, the 40th year. They gave them a reprieve. They let them go into Tzro, which is a moited dikizach. May say the Pascal Lobos. A whole year of Yidden who were supposed to die in the Midbar, the Eibishter forgave them. And they were into Eretz Yisrael. And La'ela Techolek Ha'aretz, they were zeicha to be Nechle Ha'aretz mit den ganzen Sturim. Chamish B'Av. So how could you say that Tisha B'Av it's in an instant? L'chayre it takes 6 days. So the Rebbe explains. Inyan HaNechoma, because on Tisha B'Av the Nechoma yesh nekfar b'Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av itself you have the consolation. Shezeu Emirem b'Tchilas Mincha Menachem Tzin Ubeinei Yerushalayim. Mincha in the afternoon you say Menachem, and you finish with the idea of Nechoma. On Tisha B'Av you speak to the Eibishter being the consoler, like it says in the Medrash. Lefisha Oz Neldo Mashiach Shal Yisrael. Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av, as they say in Medrash. That the Rebbe brings in footnote Aleph on the next page. Gosa Parase. We take you from Miyad. Gosa Parase. Shpam Shniya Neldo Mashiach Shal Yisrael. There was a Taya, a Goy, an Arab, who had a cow, and one of the Gedali Yisrael walked by, and the cow neighed. It made a moo, a sound that animals make. So the Taya said, the Chorba Beis HaLekim, the Mishpah was destroyed. Then it neighed a second time, and he said right away, Neldo Mashiach Shal Yisrael. Mashiach Tzidkenu was born. So on Tisha B'Av, Mashiach is born. And Derech Hagav, someone sent around the tape on the WhatsApps. You know how these things work? Someone sent tape on the WhatsApps. Where the Rebbe said that, it says in Kisvei Arizal, one of my friends made a picture of the page and sent it around. That Tisha B'Av in the afternoon, as the Beis HaMikdash was burning, the Yidden was Sameach Simcha Gedolah. Because they understood that the Eibush is destroying his house rather than destroying them. B'shas Maaseh. The Rebbe is going to say later in this Maimer Avot, which is really very interesting. It's on the bottom of page Shin Sadak Aleph. It's on the bottom of the page Shin Sadak Aleph, which we're actually going to learn. And I'm planning to teach this to you today. But take a look. The pasuk says, "Kala Chamosei ala eitzim v'ala avonim." Let's get the second line from the bottom. Yeah, alitzim v'avonim. It's a Gemara. So the Rebbe titled Kala Chamosei. The Eibishter used up all of his anger. Kala Chamosei. He used up all of his anger on wood and stone, and there was no anger left. That's the Rebbe's word. Kala eitzal, kolsa eitzal, avachamosim. Not he let it out in eitzal chamasim. He exhausted it. So there's geblib mekin grimtzan. He used up whatever chema and af the Eibishter had. He used on Eitzim Avanim and no more left. So on Tisha B'Av itself, there was a rally nailed the Mashiach Shal Yisrael. Top of page Shin Pei Tes. Go back to where we're holding. She'en Yonehu. You see what I showed you? You see those 2 lines? Yes? Kila Chamasei. Mizmer La'asaf. Why is it Mizmer La'asaf if L'ch'eira the Beis HaMikdash is being destroyed? Because Ba'asreifa Kila Chamasei. Very good. Yeah. But in the Pnim, it's in the bottom over there. Says the Rebbe, She'en Yonehu Hanakuda V'Ikir V'Ha'etzem D'Tshuva. This idea that on Tisha B'Av there's a Nechama, it's not just Hashem, it's Yidden. So Tisha B'Av there was an event of Tshuva, and this event of Tshuva doesn't happen over 45 days or whatever it is, 53 days. If you count Simchas Torah, it's 50, from the first day of Shechei Deshal, it's 53 days. From the second day of Shechei Deshal, you count 52 days. It's in an instant. So Taket Tishrei is Inyan Tshuva, but because it's Halicha Darga, Acher Darga, compared to the Tshuva of Yom Kippurim, it's Tzaddik. V'hainu, this means Shaha'inyin, the Leidas Mashiach, the birth of Mashiach, Maskal Be'esei Hayim, begins that day. take it from Yad immediately. At the same instant that there's the lowest low, there's the highest high. It's not 1 second and then another second. It's at the same instant. And of course, you need to analyze this idea that it's at the same instant. And the way it's revealed is such that even though that Bekama Inyanim in many ways, Maschilim la'achrei Chatzos Hayom de Tisha B'Av, the Tzara started in the after Chatzos Hayom of Tisha B'Av. For example, that the building was actually burnt. La'achrei Chatzos Hayom of Tisha B'Av. Nevertheless, the great darkness of that moment is connected to the inyan of Leidas Mashiach. So again, the meaning of these words, Nimshach begoli bekama and yonam shamaschil la'arach chatzos hayom Tisha B'Av, means bad things. The Beis Hamikdash was ignited Tisha B'Av in the afternoon, which is why the Avelis continues 3/4 of the day of Yud, because that's when the Beis Hamikdash did most of his burning. You know why that's when it was lit? Because that's what nailed the Mashiach Shal Yisrael. V'rak it is only that Kadei Shagila Yeh B'Shleimus, for the revelation to be total, you have to have Hamtein at Chamish Asa B'Yav. We find the original cause of the Chamish Asa B'Yav was the Yem Shekol Bei Meisei Midbar, the people who were dying in the Midbar didn't die. Now they didn't die on Tisha B'Av, but Sha'at Chamish Asa B'Av Haya Sofek B'Dav, they were not sure. V'kasher Kaimes Yeh Rabash Lamusa, when the 15th of the month came, that's when they knew they knew that retrospectively in hindsight that they made a mistake. Tisha B'Av the Eibishter forgave them. So Takeh Chamisha also above, there's a gilui of this tshuva, there's a gilui of this nechama bekeflayim, but it happens on Tisha B'Av. Happens Tisha B'Av. And then the Rebbe says, V'heim, and the Yidden who didn't die that year were Eida Shleima, that about them it is written, V'atam, actually says a chumash, V'atam adveikem ad Hashem elakechem chayim kocham hayim. Everybody here today is Dovak of the Eibishter, is living, and aimed him likonas l'aretz. They can go into that to solve. First of all, Begula Amitas V'Shleima de Geil Rishon, and then of course it's connected to the Geil Acharin. And the Rebbe goes into a shtickle about Mitzrayim. Turn to page Shin Sadik, right? Which includes also Mashiach said came. So even though it's not revealed, the Chamish Asa B'Yav, Chamish Asa B'Av reveals what happened on Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av, in the moment of maximum Yerida, you have maximum Aliyah, and the Rebbe insists that the maximum Aliyah is not just the Nechama B'Keflayim, it's the Tshuva B'Keflayim. It's the Tshuva B'Keflayim. Right? My brain is coming up with a blank, but one of the Shiva de Nechemte is Nachamu Nachami. Right? But there's also, one of the Shiva de Nechemte is about Tshuva, double Lashon of Tshuva. Remember or not? And the Rebbe connected to Pashas Vos Chanon, and I'm not sure how. I don't know how it's connected to Pashas Ezra, Pashas Vos Chanon. He's Abba Berige Chodel Pashas Dvorim B'Chazein. The next two lines, he said I wrote a question mark on the margin. I don't know what he wants. Anyway, we're going to start 5 lines into page Shin Tzadik. He uses the word Berige Chodel Pashas Dvorim B'Chazein. I guess it means right after Chazein, you have right away Nacham. That's why Chedesh Av is advantageous, not because of the Aliyah, but because of the Yerida. Because the Aliyah is Lefiyah Chayirid. That I feel the Chedesh Tishrei, certainly when you compare it to the Avodah of Tishrei. Certainly when you compare it to the Avodah of Chedesh Nisan. The Avodah is Chedesh Tishrei, it's Taka and Avodah of Tshuva. But since it's Be'efin Shel Alicha Midarge L'Darge, it's gradual. Therefore, the tshuva of Tishrei Tnuazu Shayeches La'Avedas HaTzadikim. It's a tshuva which even tzadikim have a shayches. Mash'ein ken v'ilu aliyah the Chedesh Av is menakatz ala katz from one extreme to the next. Shazu yatnu Avedas Baalei Tshuva. That's the true idea of a Baal Tshuva. You know, the touch Baal Tshuva. A Baal Abai is over Tshuva. According to Kabbalah, Tshuva is the Madrega of Bina. Baal Tshuva is Chochma. There's Tshuva and there's Baal Tshuva. Bina. Tshuva is either Malchus or Bina. So if Tshuva Tatah, it's Malchus. Tshuva is Bina. Baal Tshuva is Zah. The husband of Tshuva Tatah is Zah. And the husband of Tshuva is Chochma, and the Keitz Isha Yud is Haydn Chochma. Yeah, Baal Tshuva. And because it's a Tshuva B'Shayt Echad B'Yichad. Now, what should happen now is that I should give you a Fabrein. We should now talk about the Nekud of Tshuva. And the Nekud of Tshuva is Kishmai Kein Hu. a person turns around his life in an instant. This is a koyach that comes from the Rebbe only. It comes from the Rebbe only. A friend, a young man, a shliach, young man, to be my father, told me, Kemat, to be my father, told me that you go on shlichus, do a lot of good things, but a bal tshuva you don't make. You're zeiche. Bal tshuva you don't make bal tshuva. People do tshuva, because tshuva doesn't make any sense. The turnaround of tshuva is completely hipchasech. It's such a deep inyan. You're talking about regular people to radically change their life and to sustain that change. Not to do tshuva and then to lose it. It's mamish the Rebbe, but then you happen to be the lucky one who gets to say, this is my Baal Tshuva. What's your Baal Tshuva? You're in the Rebbe the zugeschickt an neshama, and you're able to be vared and to be meile, to be mezachech. This neshama, this is your inyan, this is your avoida, this is your meile, this is your uftu. But and the koyach of tshuva is an instant. You know, I told you this many times that Baal Tshuva go through a process of doing tshuva, then they go through a process of becoming frum. But there's a moment where the yechid is be'ez galus. The preparedness to change themselves completely is extraordinary. You know, Baal Tshuva, a real Baal Tshuva, it's a fantastic thing. It's mamish, an amazing thing. And the Rebbe argues the reason it happened in an instant because it has nothing to do with Seder. So Chamisha also ben Nisan is tzaddik. Chamisha ben Tishrei is Baal Tshuva ben Midargi el Dargi. Chamisha also ben Menachem is Tshuva, the true union of Tshuva. B'shaita chodo, in the wording of the Rambam, I'm not that person. The person who did the Aveda no longer exists. I'm a new human being. And the Rebbe says, that's why it says in the Mishnah, there were no greater Yomim Tevim like Chamisha Asabav and Yom Kippur. But he puts Chamisha Asabav before Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is also a day of Tshuva, yeah? First, you mention Chamisha Asabav Yov. Then you mention Yom Kippur, Lohoiris, because it's showing Shamaylas Chamisha Asabav Yov, Gedela Yesem Imas Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is also a day of Tshuva. That makes it a day of great Simcha. Or the renewal of the nuptials between Yidden and the Eibishter after a disenfranchisement, after a distancing. Right? Yom Kippur, Tshuva. But the Tshuva of Yom Kippur does not compare to the Tshuva of Chamisha Asabav Yov because the disenfranchisement doesn't compare. I was displaying Chamisha Asabav Yov. I make a living making speeches. If you do a Devel Zok, the Dash never does Tshuva. Everything he hears is for his speeches. But this year, I don't know why, but in all of my drushes, I didn't have too many, but the few times I spoke over here, I spoke it on the Zoom, I mentioned the word that the Rebbe said once, that if Mashiach would have come by Elef HaRavi, that's Besula Nisas L'Yem HaRavi. You would have been the Madrega of a Besula, and Mashiach would have come. Almona gets married B'Yem HaChamishi, the 5th millennium. And a Machze Grushose is in the 6th millennium. So the Rebbe said if Mashiach had come in the 4th millennium, Yidden would have been a Psul. If Mashiach had come in the 4th millennium, Yidden would have been a Psul. If Mashiach had come in the 5th millennium, Yidden would have been an Almona. An Almona doesn't mean that the Eibishter died. Ki'isha, Sheholach, Baila, Medina Sayyam, as if the husband died. He abandoned us, but he came back. The fact that Mashiach is coming in Elav Hashishi, there's Poshet a divorce, and then there's Poshet an inyan of Machze Grushose. So the Rebbe says the Yerida that came before has everything to do with the Aliyah that comes after, since this is the maximum Yerida, this is the maximum Aliyah. And what is the nature of this Aliyah? B'shaita chodo b'rigi chodo. Ki afal shpisha b'negele yom kippurim misparish b'gemara. The Gemara says about Yom Kippur that ma'alosehi mishum the ispes lichum mechila, it's the day of atonement and forgiveness, which is Aveda Satshuva. Skip the bracket. Mikomakam, nevertheless, God lo mas Chamisha Asabav Yov. Yeseh mas Yom Kippurim. Chamisha Asabav is on a higher level than Yom Kippur. Why? Because the Fisha Boy and Chamisha Asabav Yov, you have a new concept. You have Mudgeshes Avedes HaTshuva. You emphasize that there is a work of Tshuva. I don't know how work goes together with this statement. B'shaita chodo b'rigi chodo, in a spontaneous instant, min hakotza l'kotza, from one extreme to the next. Everybody knows the famous story. I think the Rebbe told the story. That the Friedrich was sitting on a train in Germany, and the local Rabbanim were accompanying the Rebbe. And one of the Rabbanim looked at his watch. Germans are very precise. And he said, nach geblieben eine Minute, 1 minute left. So the Friedrich Rebbe said, kemen noch allein chappen ton tshuva. You do tshuva. Because tshuva is belizman. Tshuva is no zman. Every mitzvah has a shir. So you want to put on film, you have to wear it for whatever, it's hiluch dal ramas. You want to sit in the sukkah, there's a shir. You want to shake a lulav, there's a shear. What's the shear of Zman of Tshuva? None. Shaik Techod, the big Chod means it doesn't take any time. That's why it's L'mayla min Azman. It's so L'mayla min Azman that it can change what happened yesterday. Tshuva law is Eikes Adav L'mafreya. Me'ikre, the Aveda never occurred. It's L'mayla min Azman, and it also reverses. And this is the Tshuva of Chamish Asa B'Yav more than Yom Kippur. Mashenkim Yom Kippur. Even though it's also in from Tshuva. Fakat, it's also on the Yin of Tshuva law. Nevertheless, Aved is a Jewish Be'bolach Reve Yaruch. There's a bunch of steps. So even though Tshuva of Yom Kippur is also from Yechida and also from Tshuva law, but it cannot compare to the Tshuva law of Yom Kippur, of Tisha B'Yav and Chamish Asa B'Yav. I don't know how you could explain this. If you learn the Rebbe Sichas on Yom Kippur, Zaydis Nas like Ezachis, Avedas become mitzvahs, but the whole shturim, how could Chamish Asa B'Yav be higher than that? I don't know, but that's what the Rebbe says. Yom Kippur is after all Seder Mesudah. And Tisha B'Av is a Rega Kamemra, is a Shayt Echad Rega Echad. And now the Rebbe gives us philosophy. Nothing here is a surprise. This is classic stuff. Can you give this young lady a copy of the Maamar, please? You mind? They're sitting right over there. We're on the bottom of page Shin Sadik. The bottom of page Shin Sadik. Let's explain the idea in general. To move about the Rosh my mother explain it. That there's a constant rule that whatever you go up is relevant or relative to how far you went down. In other words, there's an oimek, right? You know, the expression lo yidach mimenu nidach. How do you say it in English? God don't make no junk. Or to say it in the language of the 21st century, we cannot afford waste. Everything has to be recycled. That's the way it goes, right? We used to think you have garbage, you put it into a dump and then you run out of dumps. And you say you have to take everything and recycle it. There is no waste, right? It says in Chassidus, it says in Likutei Sichos, the one time the Eibishter threw things in the garbage that there was waste is the Mabul. After the Mabul, when the Eibishter made a covenant with the world that he's never going to destroy it again, the Rebbe says in Likutei Sichos, the meaning this is, if I ever destroy anything, it's for the sake of rebuilding. It's never for the sake of it being destroyed. So that's the Yisod. Yidden did Avedas. The Eibishter punished them. We throw them away. There's no throwing away. There's no throwing away. If you accept this Yisod of La Yidach Memenu Nidach, if you accept this Yisod that there's no garbage can, nothing is wasted. So when something something falls to a very low level, it has to be for the sake of recycling. And of course, it would be a waste to recycle it and bring it back to its former condition, because then it was that way already. So you have to say, you need to say, a young man asked me a question, what about Goyim and Klipa? How do you apply these principles of Yidach Menu Nidach and Yidach to them? And the Rebbe explains it in Chassidus. I'm not going into it at the moment. But when it comes to Yidden, it means that the Yidden themselves are recycled. Not in a different Gilgul, not in a different Guf. Every Yid comes back in Tchias HaMesim, the same Guf that was before. So if you accept this principle of Yidach Menu Nidach, if you accept this principle, there's no garbage can. Everything has to be recycled. So when something falls terribly, it's for the sake of being recycled. And not just recycled, but Yerida Tzerech Aliyah. V'lachein kasha Yerida. He ad lamata mata b'yeser. When the decline, when the fall is the greatest, so you have to say from Tzayda Agra, based on how much pain there was in the fall, that's how much reward there's going to be in the boomerang, in the bouncing back. Shedavka oz nases ha'aliyah l'mayla mayla b'yeser. What fell lower has a bigger aliyah. There's so many places in Chassidus. If a spark of godliness is on the lowest levels, that's the proof. Its source is very high. Based on the principle which is brought in 100 Maamar Chassidus, that's not easy. What's an Arizal? It's brought in Chassidus, top of page Shin Sadik Aleph. The pasuk says in our Pashas Ekev, right? The Eibishter made people that have to eat. Eibishter made everything that it has to eat. Everything is a machtas umeis. Everything takes in and gives out, except for the mosquito, who takes in and doesn't give out. That's why it's considered the worst klipa. Yita shemachnas sheni meitz, very meitz. And what do we live on? We live on lower kingdoms. We live on animals, plants, and minerals. And animals live on plants and minerals. And plants live on minerals, and so on. And the question is, I don't understand. Why can't I live for myself? Why have to live for others? So physically, I need those other entities to renew my energy and to renew my physiology, my body parts. But spiritually, it's Moitzepi Avaya, right? You're not just living from the physiology within the food that you're consuming, that the physiology in the food is renewing the physiology of the person by giving it energy and compounds and whatever else it needs for sustenance and for renewal and so on. But we're living, our neshama lives from the neshama within the food. Our guf lives from the guf of the food that we eat, and our neshama lives from the neshama within the food. The neshama within the food is lower. It says the Rebbe, "Va'afa pi shegam Adam yeshne meitzi pi Hashem." Yid also has a neshama. So why do I have to have the neshama of the animal, plant, and mineral to sustain my neshama? Why can't I live on my own neshama? It's only when a person is connected to bread which is lower than a person. The person lives. We're not talking about the guf. We're talking about the neshama, which is one with the guf, but nevertheless we're talking about the neshama, not the guf. And the neshama lives from the neshama within the food, just like the guf lives from the guf of the three lower kingdoms. The reason this is Chai, Tzemeach, and Daimim are lower than a person, but the root is higher. When a person does work, in the life, the neshama, the words of Hashem which give life to the animal, plant, and mineral, to bring it back to its source, which is even higher than Adam. The Adam has an aliyah, like it says, so our body needs the food, to physical food to sustain it, and our soul needs the spiritual food to sustain it. How can an animal, a plant, and a mineral soul sustain the human soul, which is higher? And the answer is because since it fell, it has a higher source. And this is a raya to this idea of Yerida Tzedek Aliyah. Later on in the Maamar, the Rebbe is going to go back to this and reference it one more time. And of course, it's relative. If you fell further, then you rise higher. This is a constant in all matters of Yerida. There's the fall of Seder Ishtalshus, and then there's Yerida of Golos. That's the idea of that when the base and make it destroy, we had Golos. To the lowest level. We came to the highest aliyah. And the Rebbe says, the close in Golos. This is the point and purpose of Golos. Page Shin Tzaddik Aleph, second paragraph, fourth line. To say that the point is einish. God forbid that Hashem is punishing or taking revenge. And we should achieve tahara. And then the Rebbe says tahara mavil de kedusha. Tahara brings to kedusha. And from kedusha you come to all the higher inyanim. What are the higher inyanim? Gilel Yahu and Binyan Beis Hamikdash and all the other things. Like it says in the end of Masechta Seder, right? The Rebbe is mitzayin to the end of Masechta Seder. I take a modern Aveda Zara is mitzayin. You have Biasal Yahu Navi and Tchias HaMeisim. Hachel Ma'in the Tchias HaMeisim Kifishes Zrutu de Bechum B'chai HaMeisim. The idea of Tchias HaMeisim even nowadays, which sets up Tchias HaMeisim L'Yosef Love. Says the Rebbe Shebeklolos. So when you look at Golos, and on the one hand you say Mepnei Chataeinu Galina Me'atzenu, we earned this through our own sin. On the other hand, we say cannot look at Golos as an einish, as a punishment. You have to look at Golos as a Yerida Tzedek Aliyah. So the Rebbe says, because the Yerida is so great, the Aliyah that follows is so great. So what is Golos itself? If Golos is not an einish, what is it? Says the Rebbe, it's correcting a lower wrong. Since Golos is such a great Yerida, that means the sparks fell so low. The beater of Golos is to raise them so high. Like it says in Chazal, when you fall from a higher low to a lower low, it's a concept of Misa. The idea of Tchias HaMeisim, you bring back people from the dead even. You give them life. And the And the Rebbe says, because the Yerida is so low, as it's represented by the Golos, and the Churban and the Golos, and all the other Inyanim, and since we're not able to accept, we refuse to accept, that it's only an einish, because Hashem doesn't have a garbage can. It's all recycling. Since we fell so low, is a simon that we should be mevared this lowness and come to a greater height. And the Rebbe says the Ka'amal we discussed before, she'ilu is this aliyah, shel achrei hayirida, which follows this great yerida, is nasa begili kfar b'Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av itself, you not only have the yerida, you already have the aliyah. Bisman b'tchila zman mincha, she'as kila chamaz zekvecha. They uses up all his anger. No more anger left. Al eitzah and va'avonim, like you said before, that I paid shin pay test. The Rebbe is ma'mayed in the Rishime. She'zeh here begili gedla avad hakadosh baruch Hu. This shows on Hashem's great love. Shekol chamasi, all of his anger. Kila is gone. He used it up. Hashem can't be angry anymore. Immediately. We said that's how he behaved. And he repeats again, Adayin aims the Tachal Shleimus Agil, not the highest levels. Because each day later it's more. As the moon gets closer to the sun and to being a full moon, and the Shleimus Agil, which is Chamisha Asa B'Yav, which is the Yom Tev Gadol B'Yeseh, like you say, Yom Tev L'Sag Chamisha Asa B'Yav, which is even higher than Yom Kippur. Shai, we learned half a Maimed, exactly half a Maimed. Was it difficult? No. But it's so sweet, it's such good stuff, huh? The Rebbe brings out that this is the Nekudah. L'Yidich ben Yidich. Since if the Eibush is so angry that he's going to destroy, then you have to say that what he's going to rebuild after is going to be who knows how great. Chamish, Tisha B'Av is the maximum Yidah, so it's the maximum Aliyah, and it's revealed Chamish. This is half a Maimed. What happens in the second half of the Maimed? The Rebbe compares this to the first Pash of Krishma and the second Pash of Krishma. And the way it works out is that the first Pash of Krishma is like Tzaddik. First Torah, then Mitzvahs. The second Pash of Krishma is like Bal Tshuva. But Bal Tshuva after he does Tshuva, after Mashiach comes. Because then it's Mitzvahs and then Torah, because Asad Lavi is going to be Maisa Gadol. Please come back on Sunday and we'll learn the other part.